there is a quiet tension beneath the surface of every moment we try to control. It whispers in the subtle tightening of our chest, the restless clenching of our hands, the endless planning and revising of futures that remain elusive. Control, we believe, is our anchor. It is the solid ground beneath our feet, the force that holds chaos at bay. Yet it is also our prison. This paradox lives quietly inside us, the very grasp that promises safety slowly constricts, limiting the horizon of possibility, narrowing the breadth of freedom. Imagine a lotus rooted deep in muddy waters. Its roots clutch the thick earth, searching for stability and nourishment. Above the surface, the flower opens effortlessly, petals unfolding in gentle surrender to sun and breeze. Yet beneath, those roots hold tight to the uncertain soil, resisting the flow, resisting the unknown currents of the pond. So too does our desire for control cling to life's uncertain ground, even as the surface of our experience yearns to bloom freely. The illusion lies in believing that by tightening our grip, we master the tides, when in truth, the waters respond only to the yielding touch. This tension is not a failure of will, but a universal rhythm woven into human experience. The mind's impulse to grasp is as natural as the ocean's ebb and flow. It arises from a place seeking safety, continuity, identity. But when this impulse becomes our sole refuge, the boundaries between self and circumstance harden. We become trapped in the very effort meant to secure us. The heart grows restless in the paradox. Control promises peace, yet delivers struggle. There is a story from the Zen tradition of a fisherman who desperately clung to his net after a violent storm had threatened to rip it apart. His grasp was so fierce that he could not see the net's holes, nor the fish slipping quietly through. It was only when he loosened his hold, letting the net drift with the current, that he noticed the fish returning, filling the net again without force. This story does not preach surrender as passivity, but as an active openness to life's rhythms, an invitation to trust the unseen currents that carry us beyond the immediate struggle. In our own lives, the impulse to control often emerges from a fear of loss of status, security, love, or selfhood. Yet, in clinging to the illusion of mastery, we may miss the subtle dance of trust that invites transformation. The question then becomes less about how to hold on, and more about what arises when we stop holding at all. What happens when the self releases its grip on the narrative it has so carefully crafted? What unknown freedom waits beyond the walls built by fear? This is the space where transformation stirs, not in the grasping, but in the courageous pause of letting go. The anchor we once relied upon dissolves into the fluid wisdom of flowing water, reshaping identity and meaning with a gentle but unstoppable force. In this dissolution, we do not lose ourselves, we discover ourselves anew in the spaciousness beyond control. This is both terrifying and wondrous, a liminal place where fear and trust entwine, inviting a surrender that is not defeat but an opening, a breathing room for life to unfold in ways we could never predict or command. To live here is to become like water, yielding yet persistent, soft yet powerful. It is to embody the paradox that control is both our anchor and our prison, and that the path to freedom weaves through the very act of release. As we step into this truth, the restless grip begins to loosen, and a new landscape emerges, one marked not by domination over circumstance, but by intimate communion with the flow of existence itself. There was once a woman who clung tightly to the reins of her life, convinced that every detail had to be managed, every outcome controlled. Her days were filled with schedules, lists, and an endless to-do chain that tightened like a noose around her spirit. Yet despite her fierce grip, she found herself unraveling, fraying at the edges, exhausted by the very effort meant to secure her peace. Each attempt to hold steady only revealed how much more fragile the ground beneath her had become. Her story is not uncommon. We all know the strain of holding fast when the currents shift beneath us, like a river swollen by rain. Life surges forward regardless of how tightly we clutch. Resistance burns energy and dims our vision. The harder we try to force stability, the more the world seems to slip through our fingers. And with every desperate grasp, a quiet surrender grows inside. An unspoken question: could release be the true strength? In one moment of raw vulnerability, she allowed herself to pause, to breathe into the tension rather than fight it. And there, amid the trembling, she glimpsed a new possibility. What if letting go was not losing, but opening? What if the boundaries she had drawn so tightly around herself were the very walls that imprisoned her? That single moment cracked the rigid shell of control, inviting a slow, unfolding transformation. Her journey teaches us that struggle is not a sign of failure but a doorway. When holding tight breaks us, it also points us toward the profound freedom found in surrender. In that delicate balance between fear and trust, we discover the space where life's wisdom flows, fluid, unexpected, and deeply alive. Her story lingers in the quiet spaces between effort and release, a mirror for our own restless grasping. She had spent years weaving safety nets of control around every facet of her life. The hours of her day, the words she spoke, the path she chose, believing that if she just held tighter, the chaos would abate. But the tighter she gripped, the more life's currents slipped beyond reach, leaving her stranded in exhaustion, a fragile shell cracked by the strain of her own making. In that tension, something fragile began to crack. Not just the edges of her control, but the very narrative she had built about who she was. The struggle revealed itself not as a battle to win, but as an invitation to witness the futility of resistance. Like a river pounding against a stubborn dam, her will alone could not stop the inevitable flow, and it was within the breaking that the possibility of transformation quietly stirred. One afternoon, in a moment that felt like a surrender without choice, she let go, not in defeat, but in a raw and vulnerable opening, a trembling acceptance of uncertainty. It was as if a weight lifted, though nothing outside had changed. The air around her seemed to soften, and in that softness, something new took root, a space where fear met trust, where the self loosened its grip and discovered the gentleness of yielding. Her experience is not an isolated tale, but a universal rhythm, the story of what happens when the heart stops fighting the current and instead learns to flow with it. Holding tight breaks us, yes, but in the breaking lies the possibility of awakening. It is here, in this delicate balance between fear and trust, that we find the doorway to freedom, where control ceases to be a prison and becomes a passageway to a life transformed by surrender. What happens when we stop holding on? This question ripples beneath the surface of our everyday lives, quietly unsettling the stories we tell ourselves about control and certainty. It invites us to peer into a space both daunting and luminous, a space where the familiar edges of self begin to blur, and the rigid boundaries between wanting and surrender soften like water worn smooth by time. To ask this is to begin a journey inward, where the very act of release becomes an unfolding, an opening into something profoundly unknown. Consider the metaphor of a river. When we clutch the riverbank, desperate to keep the water confined, we resist its natural flow. The water fights back, finding new paths, eroding the banks, reminding us of its irrepressible nature. But if we step away, if we let go of the bank, we become part of the river's dance. We move with its currents, yielding and yet persistent, carried not by force but by fluidity. What emerges in that yielding is a transformation. A life lived not in opposition to change, but in harmonious resonance with it. There is a story from Buddhist tradition about a man who carried a heavy load through a storm. The more he gripped his burden, the heavier it became, until his strength failed and he was forced to set it down. Only then did he realize the weight was never truly his to carry. It was the tightness of his grasp that made it so unbearable. This moment of letting go was not defeat, but a release into freedom, a moment of awakening that reshaped his relationship to suffering and self. When we stop holding on, we create a fertile emptiness, an uncharted space where fear and trust meet. Fear whispers of loss and dissolution, while trust hums with the possibility of renewal and unexpected grace. This tension is not an obstacle to be overcome, but a vital texture of the path itself. It invites us to dwell in ambiguity, to find balance in not knowing, and to recognize that in releasing the need for control, we awaken to a life more fluid, expansive, and alive. In this spacious openness, the self is no longer a fortress but a flowing river, responsive and alive. Identity softens its rigid contours and discovers a new freedom, not in mastery, but in participation with the ever-shifting currents of existence. The transformation is subtle yet profound, a shift from clutching to flowing, from resisting to embracing, from isolation to connectedness. So, what truly happens when we stop holding on? We become vessels for life's fluid wisdom. We enter a realm where transformation is not imposed but invited, where identity is not fixed but evolving, and where freedom arises naturally from the courageous act of surrender. What happens when we stop holding on? This question is not just an invitation. It is a gentle challenge that calls us to step beyond the familiar comfort of grasping and into the vastness of uncertainty. When the hand relaxes its grip, what remains? Is there emptiness or something more alive stirring beneath the surface? The act of releasing is not simply about loss. It is the subtle opening of a door to a room we did not know existed, an uncharted space where the self begins to dissolve into the flow of life itself. Imagine a leaf clinging stubbornly to a branch through autumn winds, trembling against the cold but refusing to fall. The leaf's resistance is an act of survival, an effort to maintain control over its place in the world. Yet the moment it surrenders, when it lets go and floats freely in the breeze, it enters a new existence weightless, carried by currents unseen, transforming its journey from one of struggle to one of grace. In this metaphor, we glimpse the paradox at the heart of control. Holding tight promises safety but breeds rigidity. Release invites freedom but demands courage. A story from the Buddha's teachings offers a quiet reflection on this truth. A man carries a heavy load up a steep hill, his muscles aching, his breath short. He refuses to set the burden down, fearing what might happen if he does. Finally, exhausted beyond resistance, he allows himself to rest and gently places the load on the ground. In that pause, he realizes the load was never truly his to bear. It was the weight of his own clinging that made it so heavy. This moment of surrender did not mark defeat, but revealed an unexpected lightness, a freedom born from relinquishing the illusion of control. When we cease to hold on, we do not disappear, rather we enter a state of profound transformation. The boundaries between self and world soften, revealing a flow of existence that is at once mysterious and intimate. Fear and trust entwine here, the fear of losing what defines us, and the trust that something greater unfolds when we let go. It is in this delicate interplay that transformation takes root, not as an act of force, but as a quiet flowering of presence. To stop holding on is to step into a dance with life's impermanence, embracing the fluid wisdom of water that yields without surrendering its strength. It is to discover that true power lies not in grasping control, but in the courage to open oneself to the unknown, where identity, freedom, and meaning are reshaped by the gentle currents of surrender. To release control is at first to lose something precious. It feels like stepping off a cliff into a void, a terrifying unraveling of the familiar self. Yet within this seeming loss lies a profound paradox. By surrendering our grip, we discover an unexpected freedom. Not absence, but a new form of presence that flows beyond the limits of control. This paradox is the heart of transformation, the pulse beneath the surface of every courageous act of letting go. Consider the nature of water. It yields to the shape of every vessel, flows around obstacles, and yet carves valleys through rock over time. Water's power is not in forceful dominance, but in patient yielding, an effortless strength born from flexibility. So too does the act of release embody power in paradox. Losing control is not defeat, but an opening to a deeper, more fluid strength that cannot be grasped, only lived. An ancient Zen story illustrates this beautifully. A samurai came to a master, demanding a lesson in control and power. The master offered a bowl of water, perfectly still. When the samurai violently shook the bowl, the water spilled over, chaotic and uncontrollable. True control, the master said, is not in the clenched fist, but in the steady hand that lets the water flow freely. In this teaching lies the invitation to embrace release not as weakness, but as mastery of a subtler kind. The paradox unfolds in the interplay between fear and trust. Fear of loss, trust in the unknown. When we cling tightly, fear narrows our world. When we let go, trust widens it. This widening is not easy or safe, but it is deeply alive. It calls us into a dance with uncertainty, where we are no longer prisoners of our need to control, but participants in life's unfolding mystery. To lose control is in this light, to find a freedom that is not about commanding life, but about embracing its flow. It is to discover a strength beyond the grasp, a peace beyond the struggle, a self reshaped by the currents of surrender. To release control is to enter a paradox, a space where losing what we thought defined us becomes the very gateway to freedom. We imagine control as a fortress, solid and protective, yet surrendering it reveals not ruin but a vast openness. This paradox invites us to rethink strength, not as a clenched fist, but as the gentle yielding of water, which by flowing and yielding, transforms landscapes and carves canyons without force. There is a quiet power in this yielding, one that ancient teachings have long recognized. Consider the story of the bamboo that bends with the wind. During the fiercest storms, the rigid oak may break, but the bamboo yields, bending and swaying until the storm passes, emerging not broken but resilient. The lesson is clear. Strength arises through surrender, not resistance. This truth challenges our deepest fears. The fear that letting go means losing ourselves, losing control, losing safety. Yet, paradoxically, when we surrender the need to control, we open to a deeper sense of presence and freedom. It is here, in this vulnerable space between fear and trust, that transformation begins. We discover that true mastery is not about domination, but about harmony with life's ever-changing flow. Losing control is not the end but a beginning, an invitation to find strength in spaciousness, identity in fluidity, and freedom in the courageous act of surrender. There are moments in life when the relentless effort to control loosens its grip, and something unexpected emerges. A grace so subtle, yet so profound, it transforms the very fabric of our being. These moments do not arrive on command, they unfold quietly, often when we least expect them. They are born from vulnerability, from the surrendering of the self's tight hold on certainty, inviting us into a dance with impermanence and mystery. Consider the image of a river encountering a boulder. The water does not stop or fight the obstacle. Instead, it yields, flowing around and beneath, gradually reshaping itself, and over time the stone itself. In surrender, the river gains a kind of power, soft, persistent, transformative. This metaphor extends to our own inner landscapes. When we yield to life's challenges without grasping, we invite a flow of change that is alive and renewing, rather than rigid and breaking. There is a story of a woman who, after years of striving to control every outcome in her life, faced an unexpected illness. Her first response was fear, resistance, a tightening around hope for control. But gradually, as treatments unfolded and her body revealed its own rhythms, she surrendered, not to defeat, but to the reality unfolding before her. In that surrender, a profound shift took place. She began to listen deeply, to her body, to the moments of stillness, to the quiet spaces between breaths. What emerged was not resignation, but a new freedom, a grace that permeated her presence, a gentle strength born from vulnerability. This story echoes the paradox at the heart of surrender. It is not weakness, but a courageous openness that allows life to move through us, reshaping identity and meaning. In relinquishing control, we discover an unexpected clarity, a resonance with the fluid wisdom that flows beneath all change. This is the ground where transformation lives, where fear and trust meet and weave together in the ongoing dance of existence. These moments of grace do not erase struggle, rather, they infuse struggle with meaning and light. They remind us that surrender is not the absence of effort, but the presence of an acceptance that deepens our capacity to engage with life fully. It is in this tender openness that the self begins to dissolve, not into nothingness, but into a spaciousness rich with possibility. As we cultivate this openness, we begin to recognize the subtle gifts hidden within vulnerability, resilience born of yielding, strength born of softness, and freedom born of release. Each story of surrender, each moment of grace, becomes a thread in the evolving tapestry of transformation, a testament to the profound power of letting go. There are moments in life when the weight of control begins to lift, not suddenly, but through a quiet unraveling, a subtle loosening of the tight grasp we hold on to so fiercely. These moments emerge like dawn, breaking over a dark horizon, gentle and inevitable, inviting us into a space where vulnerability is no longer a weakness, but a doorway. It is here that the profound alchemy of transformation begins. The self softens, fear and trust intertwine, and a grace beyond our usual measure unfolds. One such story comes from a man who had spent decades shaping every detail of his life, his career, relationships, even his daily routines, with unwavering precision. Yet beneath this mastery lay a simmering unrest, a tension that no amount of planning could still. When a sudden illness struck, his finely constructed world shattered. At first, he resisted fiercely, clinging to control as his identity and security unraveled. But in the depths of this vulnerability, he found an unexpected grace, a moment when he stopped resisting, when he simply allowed life to flow through him without judgment or demand. In surrender, his rigid walls began to dissolve. What emerged was not defeat, but a luminous openness, a space where pain and beauty coexisted. This new openness allowed him to perceive life with fresh eyes. Moments once overlooked now shimmered with significance. Relationships deepened with honest connection, and a quiet peace settled in the spaces once filled with struggle. This story mirrors the essence of surrender itself, not as passive resignation, but as an active embrace of uncertainty. Like water flowing around stones in a riverbed, surrender shapes and is shaped by the contours of life's challenges. It teaches us that vulnerability is not a void to be feared, but a fertile ground where courage and grace intertwine. Each act of letting go becomes a seed from which transformation blossoms, revealing layers of strength and freedom previously hidden beneath our grasping. These moments of grace remind us that the paradox of control is deeply human. Our instinct to hold tight is born from a desire to protect, yet the true power lies in our willingness to release. It is through this paradoxical dance that identity is reshaped, meaning deepened, and the heart expanded. When we allow ourselves to be seen, imperfect, uncertain, open, we discover that surrender is not losing, but a profound gaining, the gaining of life in its richest, most fluid form. In this unfolding, we come to understand that the boundary between self and circumstance is not fixed, but permeable. The stories of surrender and transformation ripple outward, touching us in unexpected ways, inviting each of us to step gently into the spaciousness where fear and trust meet, and where the life we long for quietly awaits. There is an ancient dance that unfolds in the spaces where fear and trust meet, a delicate interplay that defines our deepest experience of letting go. Fear rises naturally, a shadow cast by the unknown, whispering warnings of loss, vulnerability, and dissolution. Trust, by contrast, is a subtle light, an invitation to lean into uncertainty with an open heart, to believe that something greater holds us, even when the ground beneath seems to vanish. This dance is not a simple choice between two states, but a continuous rhythm, a movement where fear and trust entwine and support each other. To trust is not to erase fear, but to hold it gently, to invite it to soften without resistance. Like a river flowing around stones, the current does not reject the obstacles, it embraces them, allowing tension and yielding to coexist. This tension creates a space alive with possibility, where transformation quietly stirs. A story from the Buddhist tradition captures this beautifully. A disciple asked the master how to conquer fear. The master replied, "A fear is like the night sky. It can feel endless and dark, yet it is the canvas upon which the stars shine brightest." In this metaphor, fear is not the enemy, but the backdrop that reveals the light of trust and courage. It teaches us that to surrender control is to step into the night, uncertain yet illuminated by inner grace. This interplay invites us to dwell in the unknown, not with paralysis, but with a vibrant openness. It asks us to become like water, flexible, yielding, and strong in its flow. Water does not fear the contours of the earth or the depths it must navigate. It trusts the journey, even when the destination is unseen. In embodying this, we cultivate a courage born not from certainty but from presence. The dance of fear and trust reshapes our understanding of control as both anchor and prison. Fear may bind us to the familiar, but trust offers wings to soar beyond it. The moment we embrace this paradox, the tight grip loosens, and the self begins to expand into a realm where freedom is not about mastery, but about participation in life's unfolding mystery. In this space, vulnerability transforms from a source of weakness into a wellspring of strength. The unknown becomes a sacred ground where we meet ourselves anew, imperfect, open, and alive. It is here, in the tender tension of fear and trust, that the journey from grasping to letting go finds its deepest rhythm. The delicate dance between fear and trust is the rhythm of stepping into the unknown. Fear arrives as a natural guardian, its voice echoing warnings, loss, vulnerability, the unraveling of self. Yet trust, quieter but no less powerful, invites us to soften into that very uncertainty, to believe in a holding presence beneath the surface of the unknown. These two forces do not oppose each other. They entwine like the currents of a river, sometimes swift, sometimes still, each giving shape and flow to the other. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast ocean at twilight. The waves roll in with an ancient cadence, relentless and unpredictable. Fear feels like the cold spray on your skin, the vastness pressing against the shore of your known world. But trust is the ocean's pull, a silent invitation to enter the depths and discover a resilience born of surrender. This tension between apprehension and openness is not a barrier to cross, but a sacred space to inhabit. A story from the Zen tradition offers a glimpse into this dynamic. A student, fearful of stepping into the unknown, asked the master how to overcome that fear. The master pointed to the night sky filled with stars and said, "The darkness is not your enemy. It is the canvas on which the stars shine most brightly." In that moment, fear and trust coexisted. The vast unknown illuminated not by certainty, but by presence and wonder. This interplay teaches us that to let go is not to leap blindly, but to move with awareness, holding both fear and trust as companions. Like water flowing around stones, we navigate life's obstacles not by resistance, but by yielding with grace. In this yielding, we find a strength that is fluid and enduring, a courage not born from control, but from intimate engagement with life's mystery. When fear softens into trust, the paradox of control reveals itself: control as anchor and prison, fear as caution and cage, trust as freedom and flight. To embrace this paradox is to begin dissolving the boundaries that separate self from circumstance, opening a space where transformation flows freely. It is here, in this tender dance of vulnerability, that we move from grasping toward the expansive freedom that arises from surrender. Water teaches us without words. Its wisdom flows in silence, shaping and reshaping the world with effortless grace. It is a living metaphor for the essence of surrender, yielding without losing strength, adapting without losing form. In the gentle ripple of a stream or the vast, ceaseless movement of the ocean, water reveals the paradox of control, the power found not in rigid grasping, but in fluid yielding. Imagine a mountain spring cascading over stones, its course neither forced nor fixed. It moves around obstacles, sometimes rushing with wild energy, other times flowing quietly beneath a veil of mist. This constant change is not weakness, but a form of resilience, an ability to embrace impermanence and uncertainty with openness. Water does not resist the shape of its container. It does not fight the forces that shape its journey. Instead, it becomes one with them, inviting us to reflect on how we might live with similar ease amid life's unpredictable currents. Mindfulness, like water, invites us into this fluidity. It asks us to notice the flow of thoughts and emotions without clinging, to breathe into the moment with a gentle awareness that neither forces nor resists. This practice reveals how our attempts to control often create friction and tension, while surrendering opens a spaciousness where clarity and transformation arise naturally. Each breath becomes a drop in the river of awareness, each moment an opportunity to flow rather than fix. There is a story of a Zen master who, during a thunderstorm, stood calmly beneath the rain. When asked why he was not afraid, he replied, "The rain does not hold on to the sky, nor the earth hold on to the rain. To live fully is to move like water, embracing what comes without grasping what goes." In this simple teaching lies an invitation to awaken wonder, to recognize that in surrendering control, we enter a dance with life's ever-changing nature, discovering freedom in the flow. This fluid wisdom challenges the notion that strength lies in firmness and certainty. Instead, it reveals a deeper power, the power of yielding, of flexibility, of becoming one with the movement of existence. It calls us to release the illusion of fixed identity and to find our true nature in the rhythms of change and acceptance. As we embody this fluidity, we begin to see that letting go is not a loss but a transformation. The self is no longer a rigid form, but a flowing presence, alive with the wisdom of water. In this awakening wonder, we find not only peace, but the dynamic freedom to engage with life fully and authentically, carried by currents of trust and openness. Water is more than a substance, it is a teacher, a living metaphor for the wisdom of surrender. It flows with a gentle insistence, neither forcing nor resisting, adapting to the shape of every vessel it encounters. In its yielding lies a profound strength, a fluid power that patiently carves canyons, nurtures life, and embraces transformation without losing itself. This fluidity mirrors the path of letting go, inviting us to move beyond rigid control into a dance of presence and openness. Picture a river weaving through a forest. Its course is never straight, it bends around rocks, dips beneath fallen trees, and widens in quiet pools. Each movement is an act of surrender, an adaptation to the ever-changing landscape. The river does not fight what it cannot change. It learns from every obstacle and finds new ways forward. This is not weakness but resilience, a resilience born from flexibility, from flowing with life's currents rather than resisting them. Mindfulness, too, embodies this fluid wisdom. It invites us to observe thoughts, emotions, and sensations with a gentle curiosity, allowing them to arise and pass without clinging or judgment. Like water reflecting the sky, mindfulness holds experience with openness and clarity, dissolving the rigid boundaries between self and other. It reveals that our attempts to control often create turbulence. whereas surrender fosters a spacious calm where transformation can take root. There is a Zen teaching that captures this essence beautifully. When asked how to cultivate true strength, a master pointed to a bamboo grove, swaying effortlessly in the wind. "The bamboo bends but does not break," the master said. "Strength is found not in resistance, but in the ability to yield and adapt." This simple image invites us to reconsider strength and control, not as opposing forces, but as partners in the dance of life. Embracing the fluid wisdom of water challenges the illusion that stability requires rigidity. Instead, it opens us to the possibility that true stability arises from flexibility and trust. It encourages us to let go of fixed identities and rigid expectations, to become like water, responsive, alive, and ever-changing. In this awakening wonder, we find freedom not in mastering life's currents, but in moving harmoniously with them. As we embody this fluidity, a new relationship with self and world emerges, one marked by openness, resilience, and transformative grace. The journey from grasping to letting go becomes a flowing presence, alive with the possibility of continual renewal. Life's most profound transformations often arrive not with fanfare, but in the quiet, unexpected moments when we relinquish control. These are the stories of grace that unfold when the tight grip of certainty softens, revealing a vast openness where change flows naturally and effortlessly. Such stories remind us that surrender is not loss, but the fertile ground where new life takes root. Consider the tale of a woman who, after years of relentless striving, faced an unforeseen collapse of her carefully constructed world. Her plans unraveled, her identity shaken, and yet, in the depths of vulnerability, she found an unexpected gift. By releasing the need to control every outcome, she opened herself to a flow of support and insight that had been invisible before. The very act of letting go became a portal to renewal, a transformation that reshaped her sense of self and her relationship with life. These moments of grace do not erase struggle or fear. Instead, they transform them, weaving them into a larger tapestry of meaning and possibility. Like a river that carves its path by yielding to the terrain, life's flow reshapes us through surrender, not resistance. When we stop fighting the current, we find ourselves moving with a rhythm that is at once ancient and deeply alive. In these stories, the paradox of control as both anchor and prison becomes clear. What once held us steady can become the very weight that binds us. And yet, by embracing vulnerability and releasing the illusion of mastery, we discover a freedom that transcends circumstance. It is a freedom born not from domination, but from intimate communion with life's ever-changing dance. As these transformations ripple outward, they invite us to reconsider our own relationship with control and surrender. They show us that within the unknown lies not chaos, but an unfolding grace, a subtle, steady unfolding that invites us into deeper presence and expansive wonder. There is a subtle magic that unfolds when we release our need to control, the kind of grace that appears unexpectedly, like a soft light filtering through dense forest canopy after a long night. These moments are often quiet, almost imperceptible, yet they hold the power to transform everything beneath their gentle touch. When we let go, life has a way of surprising us, revealing paths and possibilities previously obscured by our grasping. One such story comes from a man who, after years of clinging tightly to his career ambitions and the image of success, found himself at a sudden crossroads. Faced with loss and uncertainty, he stopped fighting against the flow of change. In that surrender, he discovered a new kind of freedom, a freedom that allowed him to explore passions and relationships that had been hidden under the weight of control. What seemed like an ending became, in fact, a beginning filled with unexpected joy and meaning. These stories remind us that the paradox of control, as both an anchor and a prison, is lived not just in ideas but in the flesh and bone of our lives. Our resistance can keep us trapped, but our surrender can open doors to vast, unexplored inner landscapes. When we release the illusion of certainty, we create space for life's gentle wisdom to unfold, leading us toward transformation not through force, but through openness and trust. Grace often arrives wrapped in vulnerability, inviting us to lean into the unknown rather than shy away. It asks us to be present with discomfort, to feel deeply without reaction, and in doing so, to awaken to a larger sense of connection and peace. This awakening wonder is not a sudden burst, but a gradual unfolding, a softening of edges that allows us to live with greater authenticity and joy. In these moments of letting go, we glimpse a profound truth. That transformation is less about controlling outcomes and more about embracing the flow of life with courage and openness. It is here, in the fertile ground of surrender, that the seeds of new identity, freedom, and meaning quietly take root. There is a vastness that unfolds when the need to grasp fades away. A spaciousness not found in outer landscapes, but within the depths of our own being. This expansive peace is the quiet space beyond struggle, beyond the restless urge to control or resist. It is the unbounded horizon that opens when we stop holding tight and begin to simply be with what is, without expectation or attachment. Imagine standing beneath an open sky at twilight, the horizon stretching endlessly in every direction. The sky holds nothing back, it neither clings nor confines. In this boundless expanse there is freedom, not a freedom born of doing or achieving, but a freedom of presence, of surrender. This is the spaciousness beyond grasping, where identity dissolves into the flow of life, and the self is no longer a fortress, but a wave riding the currents of existence. The path to this freedom is often veiled by our fears, the fear that without control, chaos will consume us, that surrender means loss. Yet, paradoxically, it is precisely in letting go of control that we discover an unshakable foundation. Like water flowing into an ocean, the self merges with a greater whole, finding strength in openness rather than rigidity. This merging is not a loss of self, but a transformation into a wider, more fluid presence. There is a story from Buddhist teaching of a monk who, in meditation, realized that his sense of self was like a cloud drifting across the sky, ever changing, without fixed form. When he ceased to clutch at a stable identity, he found a freedom so vast it encompassed joy and sorrow alike. In that spaciousness, he was untouched by the shifting winds of circumstance, held instead by the boundless sky of awareness. Experiencing true freedom is this spaciousness, a place where the paradox of control dissolves, where fear and trust coexist without conflict. It invites us into a dance with life's unfolding mystery, where the self loosens and expands, finding rest in the flow rather than in resistance. This peace is not distant or unattainable, it is present, waiting to be discovered in the simple act of letting go. In embracing this expansive peace, we begin to live with a profound ease, a quiet empowerment that arises from being fully present, fully alive, and fully free. The spaciousness beyond grasping is a sanctuary not found in places, but within ourselves, a boundless openness that emerges when the tight clutch of control finally loosens. Imagine a vast sky stretching endlessly, unmarked by edges or boundaries, inviting us to rest within its calm expanse. This is the true freedom that arises when we stop holding on. Not a freedom of doing, but a freedom of being, where the self dissolves into a greater flow. This openness is often concealed beneath layers of fear and habit. We cling to control because it offers a semblance of safety, yet that very grasp confines us within a prison of our own making. The paradox is profound. The more we try to secure ourselves, the more trapped we become. It is only by surrendering this need that the walls begin to fall away, revealing the spacious peace that has always been present beneath the surface. There is a story from the life of a revered monk who, facing the turmoil of a world in flux, found himself in meditation beside a quiet lake. As the ripples of the water settled, so too did the tumult within. In that stillness, he realized that his true self was not the constant thinker grasping at control, but the vast, calm presence beneath, the spaciousness that held all things without resistance or attachment. This insight was not an escape, but a deep engagement with reality, an awakening to freedom in surrender. Experiencing this spaciousness is to feel life without the sharp edges of grasping, joy and sorrow, certainty and doubt coexisting without tearing us apart. It invites us into a profound acceptance, a softening that transforms resistance into flow. In this space, identity becomes fluid, not fixed. Freedom arises naturally, not forced. As we rest in this expansive peace, we touch the essence of transformation, the quiet empowerment that comes not from control, but from courageous surrender. It is here that the journey from grasping to letting go finds its true home, where life moves through us with grace, and we become vessels of a deeper, boundless freedom. True strength often whispers rather than shouts. It is not the loud command of force, but the quiet presence that arises when we stop resisting and begin to surrender. In the act of letting go, a profound power is born, not from control or domination, but from acceptance and trust. This is the quiet strength of surrender, a steady current beneath the turbulence of life that supports transformation from within. Imagine a great tree, its roots deep and expansive, grounded yet flexible. It bends with the wind rather than breaking, standing firm not through rigidity, but through a resilient openness. This image reflects the integration of letting go, a harmony between strength and softness, between presence and release. In surrender, we find not weakness but a quiet empowerment that carries us through uncertainty with grace. There is a story of a master who, when asked how to confront life's storms, said, "Be like water, yielding and persistent. Water does not resist the rocks it encounters. It flows around them, shaping its path with patience and quiet force." This metaphor reveals that surrender is not passive resignation, but an active engagement, a courageous letting go that is itself a form of mastery. Integrating letting go means cultivating this inner steadiness amid change. It is learning to rest in the spaciousness beyond control, to trust the unfolding of life even when outcomes remain unknown. This quiet empowerment does not erase fear or struggle, but transforms them into allies, guiding us gently toward freedom and peace. As we embody this strength, the paradox of control as anchor and prison dissolves. We move from grasping to flowing, from resistance to acceptance, and in that movement, we discover a freedom that is both subtle and profound, a freedom rooted not in external mastery, but in the courageous surrender of the inner self.